Kolink power supply. Today we have 5 Kolink power supply here. The first one, we have the Kolink SFX-450 450 watts rated power supply. We have the ancient Kolink KL-400. We have the newer Kolink classic power, and we have the KL-500 and the KL-C500. The KL-C500 claims to have 33 amp on the 12 volt rail, while the KL-500 only have 30 amps, 360, and KL-C500 396. So we're gonna test that out later to see if they will be able to supply the rated power. First on the chopping block is the Kolink KL-400. Let's check the idle power draw. It's about 7 watts. Now I'm gonna turn on the load. First I'm gonna turn off the power supply. Turn off, turn it off in. I'm gonna turn on the electronic load. Alright. Power on. So we got about 2 amperes on the 5 volts, 2 amperes on the 3.3, and 2.5 on the 5 volt standby. Can do 288 watts on the 12 volts range, so we're gonna pull about 288 watts here. So here it is. Alright, that's 298 watts. 298 watts there. Okay, let's see the the 5 volts is okay within regulation. 3.3 volt is okay. The 5 volt BSB is 4.77, still okay. The 12 volts regulation is down to 11.45 something, so it's just barely within the 5% spec. So this power supply is okay for use on stock computer. Don't bother use this for overclocking. The 12 volt regulation is pretty low, very mediocre. Just the minimum spec for the 12 volts is 11.4, and this is just barely at the minimum there. Okay, let's check the power draw. It's 408 watts. It's pulling 408 watts. Maximum power draw is 108. We're pulling about 298 on the 12 volt. On the 5 volts we're pulling about 10 watts. and 3.3, 6.6, and it's about 12 watts on the 5-volt PSB. I'm just recording it here. Okay, the 12 volts is 11.45, 5 volt is 5.06, 3.3, and 0.77. The power supply is barely making any noise. Okay, so that's about for the KL-400. We will move on to the next one. Next on the chopping block is the SFX-450. One thing to note about this power supply is it does not have a switch at the back here. Okay, let's check the idle power draw, about 2.8 watts. 2.8 watts. Now I'm gonna turn on the electronic load. I'll turn off this first. Turn it on. On. Turn on the power supply. So we have 1 ampere here on the 5 volts, 1 ampere on the 3.3, and 3 amps on the 5 volt standby. Now this can do 432 watts on the 12 volts ring. Here we go. It's hard to do this with one hand. $432 watts. Zoom a little bit. Alright, that's 430. That's what we're pulling 500 watts there. Wow. Right, that's 434. The power supply was able to deliver 500 watts. I didn't notice that. Okay, let's check the voltage regulation. It's like the voltage regulation of the 12 volts rail is out of spec now. That's 11.2 volts there. Okay, let's turn it off. Let's see. Oh, then we're gonna load it at full power. On. Wow. The 12 volts rail is really off spec there. That's just 11.2 volts there. Right, that's the power draw there, 552 watts, 552 watts. With 5 volts, 12 volts is 11.2. Wow, that's really out of spec. 11.2 volts. Yeah, 11.2 volts there. 5 volts. 5 volts means 5.29, 3.3, or 1.95. Wow. Let's check the voltage drop on the cable. Going to use the connection here, the 12 volt on the molex, and then measure the right, the molex is there. There's only about 0.1 volt drop on this cable here. This cable here going inside to the power supply. Even with the voltage drop added to the output, it's only going to 11.3 volts. The connector is not hot. The power supply is not noisy. That noise is from the electronic load. Right, the voltage dropped a little bit more now. Alright, that's it for the Kolink SFX-450. Fail on the 12 volts rail. Up spec on the 12 volts rail. To this first. 12 volt power is 433 watts. 433 watts. 5.2 watts on the 5 volt, 3.3 on the watts on the 5 volt. VSB is 4.86 watts. Okay, on to the next Kolink. Next is the KL-500. Right, it says 360 watts on the 12 volts, 400 watts continuous, 500 watts rated max output. So continuous power output for this is only 400 watts. That's the KL-500. This This one has power switch at the back. Shall we pull 500 watts from this power supply? It's only rated continuous at 400 watts. Okay, let's check the idle power. Ito. Right, idle power, where is it? Oh, max is about 5.4. Jumping around. Yeah, the max I see is 5.4 watts, so let's put 5.4 watts there, idle power. Put 5.4 there. Turn it off first and turn on the electronic load. On. Turn it on. With minimal load on the 12 volts rail, only 2 amperes. The output on the 5 volts is 4.66, 3.16, 3.3, 4.7 the standby. Okay, let's try to pull 360 watts on this power supply. 360 watts. Ah, 360 watts. Hope this power supply does not blow. 145, 360, here we come. Ay, 361. So the voltage output on the 12 volts is also down. That's 11.37, 11.3. Power draw at 519 watts, 519 watts. We have 23.7 into 5 volt, 12 volt. We have 361, 61. Watts, 5 volt, 23, 3.7, 3.3, 15.76, 9.42. 12 volts output is 11.32 volts. 4.74, 3.15, 4.7, 4.7 volt. I'll record the voltage output there on the power. So we'll try to do 500 watts on this power supply. It says 500 watts rated. Maybe this can do 500 watts for 10 seconds. I mean, into mind, because if the power supply blow, this can kill my electronic load. Okay, it turned off. Okay, the overpower protection kick in. Okay, at least the power supply did not blow up. The overpower protection kick in. Let's see if it's going to power on again. Oh, it's dead. Turn it off first. Off. Turn it on. Alright, it's alive again. So it survived. Okay, on to the next one. Next on the chopping block is the KL-C500. This one can do 396 watts on the 12 volt rail, while the KL-500 only 360, 30 amperes, 33 on the KL-C500, both 500 watts, 500 watts, also 100 watts there. 3.6, 3.6, 12 watt, 12.6, 12.5. Yeah, the only difference with this is this one can only do 360 and this one 396. So this one can do about how much? 36 watts more on the 12 volts rail. KL-C500 idle power draw. About 4.8 max. Idle power draw 4.8. Turn on our electronic load. On. Turn the power supply on. 12 volts without load, 12.6. Right, same with the KL-500. 5 amps on the 5 volts, 5 amps on the 3.3, 2 on the 5 volt VSB. And we're gonna pull 396 on this. 396. Here we go. To put this camera on, so I work with my 2 hands. Right, 396 watts. Here we go. $364, 85, 396. Wow. Oh, what's that beeping? Oh, it's the multimeter. Oh, this one 11.6 volts. Okay, let's check the power draw. 565 watts. Power draw 565. 565 watts. Okay, first I'm gonna record the voltage. It's 11.5, 12 volts, 11.5, 3 volts, 5 volts, 4.5, 4.5 volts, 3 volts, 3 volts, 5 volt BSP, 4.2, 4.2 volts. Oh, wow. 392 watts, 22.6, 15 watts, 8.5 watts. Okay, let's try to pull 500 watts on this power supply. We can do it. 500 watts. There we go. Okay, it shut down around 400, I think. 416. Let's turn off the power supply and see if it's going to turn on again. Off. On. Alright, it turned on again. It comes alive again. Alright, that's it for the KL-C500. Next on to the next power supply. Next is the Kolink Classic Power. This is one of the newer power supply from Kolink power supply design. This power supply has the 3.3 volt and 5 volt is supplied by a DC-DC converter. So ito, I think it only has a single 12 volt output, and this power supply is, and the minor rail, the 3.3 and 5 volt is supplied by a DC-DC step down converter from 12 volts to 5 volt, and then 5 volt to 3.3. Where's the you can see there, that's the DC-DC converter there, the one with the solid polymer capacitor. Right, idle power draw about 5 watts max. Idle power draw 5 watts max. Kolink Classic Power. I have 1 amp there on the 5 volts, 1 amp on the 3.3, and 2.5 on the 5 volt BSP. Alright, this power supply can do 2.5 amp on the 12 volt, 5 volt PSB. Can do 444 watts on the 12 volts rail, 450 watts continuous. Okay, let's do 444 watts on the 12 volts rail. Okay, 444 watts, here we come. Right, that's 445 watts there. Voltage regulation on the 12 volt is 11.8. That's very good. Wow, 12 volts, 11.8. We have the 5 volts. 5 volts. Oh, okay. Looks like the power supply turned off. Wow, the power supply turned off. Oh, the power supply turned off. Let's turn it on again. Can do 450 watts continuous. We're pulling more than 450 watts there because 5 watts, 3 there, 12, 20. So pulling about 20 plus watts on the minor rail. So that's doing about 460 watts total. Okay, let's lower. Okay, let's stay within 450 watts, maybe just 1 ampere. Let me so we can only do about what 6 watts on the minor rail and 444 on the 12 volts. If we stay within spec of 450 watts, so we can only pull 6 watts here on the minor rail. Oh, that's only 6 watts. Oh, 3 watts, 5 watts here. 3 watts here. This is already 3 watts, the 6. Five watts and 1 watt there. 1 watt there. What's this? One watt on the 5 volts, 2 watts on the 3.3, 6 watts total, and then we're gonna pull 444 there, total of 450. What? The overcurrent protection, this is overcurrent is pretty sensitive. Right, second 444 watts on the 12 volts rail. Okay, 447 it turned off. Okay, it turned off. So this power supply is really the current protection with this power supply is pretty sensitive. It turned off even before reaching the 444 watts on the 12 volt rail. Let's check to that again. Okay, that's 441 there, 441 watts there. 441. Alright, it turned off again. Yes. So this power supply cannot do its rating. So the classic power has a very sensitive over current or over power protection, and it turned off before reaching 444 watts on the 12 volt rail. How much current are we pulling at 441? That's 37.3. It can only do 37. So it can actually deliver the 37 amperes. But there's voltage loss or power loss on the cable, so the power output here, the power output display there will be a little low. Okay, so let's stick to just 37 amperes. Let's see if it's not going to shut down. Okay, so it's still shut down. It did shut down. Why? Let's keep shutting down. Let's lower it a bit more. 36.8. Oh, that's 36.8. Turned off again. Wow. Okay, so I bridge. Oh, it's still shut down with just 36 amps. Let's lower the current to maybe 35 amps. That's 35 amps. Let's turn on the power supply again. Off, on. That's 35 amps. Let's see if it's going to shut down again at 35 amps. Kolink Classic Power. Saving turbo. Delivering 37 amps on the 12 volt rail. That's 35 amps. Power draw at 35 amps, 490 watts. Power draw for 490 watts. 12 volt power, 414. 414, it's not shutting down at 414. We got 5 watts on the 5 volts. 3.3 watts on the 3.3 volt rail, 5 volt BSP, 5 watts, only 1 amp. Voltage output 11.83. 5 volt, 3.3, 3.3, 5 volt USB, 5 volt. Okay, so the maximum current that the Kolink classic power this one classic power 450 watts continuous, 500 watts rated, is only 35 ampere.